The Crown is a Netflix show. Maybe you've seen it. Raise your hand if you've watched some of The Crown. Wow, a good amount of people. Very popular watching The Crown. The Crown is a drama that follows the modern English monarchy, as the monarchy in particular has transitioned from a sort of traditional monarchy where monarchs have real power to a constitutional monarchy where monarchs are really figureheads and don't have any real power. And it sort of journeys with the House of Windsor over multiple generations as they are navigating that change and holding up the institution of the monarchy within the position of being constitutional monarchs. And in season 3, the series follows Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip, who they're, mostly following the whole show, really. Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip. They're played in season 3 by Olivia Colman and Tobias Menzies. And there's an interesting episode, I think it's episode 7 of season 3, where Prince Philip, who is sort of a courageous, adventurous, kind of strong man, sort of a better suited for a bygone era, is feeling particularly hemmed in and meaningless and useless in his role as a sort of figurehead in this constitutional monarchy. And in the episode in particular, the first group of astronauts from the U.S. have just gone to the moon. And Prince Philip has this obsessive, compulsive fixation on them and their adventure and their courage and their strength. And you can tell over the course of the episode, he's feeling like his own life has been sort of meaningless and vapid in the face of this huge accomplishment that these men have had. And you sort of see him wrestling through this over the course of this episode. And finally, near the end of the episode, he goes to a support group essentially and begins to spill all of this out to a group of clergy who are sort of pursuing a contemplative and intellectual spirituality. He says this profound monologue near the end of the episode. He says, there wasn't a specific moment when it started. It's been more of a gradual thing. A drip, drip, drip of doubt, disaffection, disease, discomfort. People around me have noticed my general irritability, by compulsive overexercising, an inability to find calm or satisfaction or fulfillment. You look in all the usual places, resort to all the usual things to try to make yourself feel better. My mother died recently. She saw that something was amiss. She saw that something was missing in her youngest child, faith. How's your faith? She asked me. I'm here to admit to you that I've lost it. And so, having ridiculed you and these poor, blocked, lost souls for what you were trying to achieve, I now find myself full of respect and admiration, and not a small part of desperation, as I come to say, help. Help me. This is a powerful and beautiful monologue in this episode, not just because of its revelatory nature, but because of the way that we see a person who normally would look like they're full of power and full of having everything together, actually in this situation calling out and asking for help. Why is it so hard to ask for help? Why is it so difficult to ask for help? How many people here are incredible at asking for help? How many times a day do you find yourself saying, help me? I need help. Asking for help is difficult. It's vulnerable. It's humbling. It reveals a reliance on others. I mean, honestly, when was the last time you simply, plainly, and honestly asked for help? Not any of those weird in-between phrases we use, where we get someone to help us without asking for it. Like, it would be great if you did that thing. Or, I'm doing this thing today, and it would be wonderful if you showed up. But just simply and plainly said, I need help. Would you help me? When was the last time, honestly, you said something that's simple and plain and true? We're really good at saying things on the opposite end of the spectrum. Things like, don't help me. Things like, I can do it myself. Those phrases come very, very easily to us. But the simple, honest, help me, I need help, well, those words haven't been in our mouths for quite some time, if we're honest. You know, we obviously need help in our lives. Our lives are full of needs. You know, if we don't ask for help in relationship to our needs, what do we do instead? We hide them, we cover them up. You know, that sort of deception about our needs is only persuasive to us. Everyone else can see that we have needs. And so actually when we're trying to cover over those needs and not address them honestly, we just are sort of revealing to other people that we're kind of immature, that we kind of are selfish or proud, that we're not able to ask for help. At best, when we're able to say, help me, we reveal to people that we have enough maturity to admit what is obviously true, namely that I have needs and you have needs. We all have needs and we need help in response to those needs. You know, it's such a gift when we tell other people that we need help. Well, how do you respond when someone simply and honestly asks you for help? Okay, and not one of those other weird intermediate phrases. We get annoyed when someone's like, go do that thing. But when someone comes to you and says, listen, this is hard for me to say, but I need help in this thing. How do we respond to those people? Well, we help them. In fact, we kind of like helping them. There's something about someone asking for help in that way that brings out the best in us when we go, I would love to be able to help you in relationship to that need. The needs of other people become gifts to us as we begin to find that we have opportunities to serve and help and bless other people. And when someone comes to us and says, I need help, would you help me? Do you know a place where I can receive help? We often find ourselves very easily offering help or telling them a place where they can go to receive help. Because when we see a need that somebody has and we care about that person and that need, and we know the solution, we very easily and naturally speak good news to them about where they can receive help. We're in the middle of a sermon series titled, Good for You, How What We Believe People Need Determines What We Tell Them. And we're looking at the question of evangelism. And in this time of the life of Vineyard Manhattan, we're looking to grow. We've moved into the space, into Hartley House, and we as a church community need to grow and being able to share our faith with other people because people need to hear good news. And so we're looking at this thorny topic, this topic that nobody likes to talk about, this topic that everybody avoids evangelism, but instead of looking at like tips or tricks or me, whipping you and trying to motivate your will to do something you should be doing, we're going to try to look at the underneath stuff of what the sharing of good news is all about and how it works so that we can be filled with living spiritual power to do something that we already do in our lives, which is tell people good news and to just tell them the good news of the gospel in addition to all the other good news things we tell them about. I've titled today's sermon, Your Needs Are Good for You. Our text today is 2 Kings chapter 5, verses 1 to 5. If you have a Bible, you should open it up and you should go to 2 Kings chapter 5, verses 1 to 5. 2 Kings is kind of in the first, near the end of the first third of the Old Testament. If you're flipping through your Bible and you're looking at books like Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, you're on the right track. Just keep flipping until you hit 1 Kings and then boom, 2 Kings. Imagine that. 2 Kings is right after 1 Kings. And again, we're going to be in chapter 5, verses 1 to 5. If you have a device, that's fine. Pull up the text. I'll read the text aloud. Naaman, commander of the army of the king of Syria, was a great man with his master and in high favor, because by him the Lord had given victory to Syria. He was a mighty man of valor, but he was a leper. Now the Syrians, on one of their raids, had carried off a little girl from the land of Israel, and she worked in the service of Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, would that my Lord were with the prophet who is in Samaria. He would cure him of his leprosy. So Naaman went in and told his Lord, thus and so spoke the girl from the land of Israel. And the king of Syria said, go now, and I will send a letter to the king of Israel. So he went. We have needs, and the fact that we have needs is a pretty much unavoidable fact. It's just in the nature of being a physical creature, of literally just not being an infinite creature, that we would have needs. Every single creature whose being is bounded has needs by definition, because you are not infinite, and so you cannot cover over everything in all time and all situations. You are a bounded being. God made you that way, and it is good for us to be that way, but with that ontological situation comes needs. We have needs because we are simply physical creatures. This reality of our needs is a basic human truth that we essentially spend our whole lives trying to avoid. We spend our whole lives and effort trying to pretend like it isn't true, trying to forget it, trying to lie about it, trying to hide it, trying to cover it up, trying to construct the bubble of my life into a fake world where I don't have any needs because everything is in and under my control. And yet, we all have needs. Obvious needs, like needs for sustenance and rest. More complex needs, like needs for companionship and purpose and meaning and satisfying work. All of us have needs, even and especially the strongest among us have needs. Enter Naaman. Meet Naaman. Naaman in the ancient world has no needs. He looks like he has no needs. We see a number of things about him in 2 Kings 5, verse 1. Naaman, commander of the army of the king of Syria, was a great man with his master and in high favor, because by him the Lord had given victory to Syria. He was a mighty man of valor. Let's list some of the things that Naaman is/has. He's a mighty man, so he's physically strong and imposing. He's a commander of the army, so he is in a socially and politically prestigious and important position. He's a great man with his master. The Hebrew literally here says he's like high of face, elevated of face with his master. So he's personally connected to the most important guy in his arena to be connected to. Not only that, he's a winner, and everybody loves winners. By the Lord, by the help of the Lord, this text says, Israel's God. God had seen to it that he should win, and so he'd been given victory. So he was seen as a winner. And the fact that he was blessed by the Lord lets us know that he even had the blessing of God. So Naaman has it all. He has no needs. Who among us today wouldn't want to be a physically fit, high in social and political standing, personally connected to powerful people, known to be a winner, blessed by God person? Wonderful. Everyone here is trading their lives for Naaman's life because Naaman has it all. And yes, even though Naaman has it all, it is true that everyone has needs, especially powerful and prestigious people. Because when a need of a powerful and prestigious person is revealed, it reveals all the ways that their life is fragile, that the things that they have are fragile, that the prestige and power and status that they have could be taken away at any moment. And Naaman has a need, and his whole life is about to be toppled by this one need. Naaman needs healing. 2 Kings 5:1 says this, he was a mighty man of valor, but he was a leper. What is leprosy? Leprosy is a skin disease that's caused by a slow-growing bacteria that causes lumps, rashes, and deformities on the skin. And over time, it can destroy nerve endings, leading to numbness and muscle decay in the fingers and toes, which can lead the fingers and toes to recede or even fall off over time. Now, leprosy, you may have had that disease in your mind when you heard the word leprosy. That sort of leprosy has become known in the modern world as Hansen's disease, because a scientist named Hansen discovered the bacteria that causes this leprosy in 1873. And there are still 225 people in the U.S. and 250,000 people worldwide each year who will contract Hansen's disease. The issue for your mental map about leprosy is that this isn't necessarily what the Bible's talking about when it reads here the English word leprosy. The biblical words sara'at and lepra, Hebrew and Greek respectively, can be used to refer to Hansen's disease, leprosy, but they also can just be referred to skin diseases generally, which may have been less severe but still had significant problems and complications for them. So if I'm ruining the biblical idea in your mind of what leprosy has been, every time, and you see in many translations it says, so-and-so had leprosy, a leper came to Jesus, leper, and these are often words that are using words in the original language that could just refer to a skin disease. And in particular with Naaman, he's a mighty man, he's a warrior, he's mighty in battle. It doesn't make much sense to imagine him missing fingers and toes and being that mighty warrior person at the same time. Indeed, the 2022 update of the NRSV updated version, renders 2 Kings 5:1 this way. It says, the man, though a mighty warrior, suffered from a skin disease, instead of saying he was a leper. Skin diseases, however, still had serious consequences associated with them. First of all, he would have had whatever physical issues are associated with his particular skin disease. We don't know exactly what those issues were. The bigger issues were the social and political and personal issues. Because to have a skin disease in the ancient world was to be seen as unclean and maybe even cursed by God. And to have that uncleanness in your flesh meant rejection from social circles, from personal relationships, and from political posts. It maybe even meant that you were rejected from the presence of God. And so everything that makes Naaman's life great is on the chopping block because of this skin disease. And you can't hide a skin disease in the ancient world. You just have it. You're hoping it goes away. Maybe it's in a couple of places in your body that you can cover. But once it gets under your hands, once it gets under your neck and your face, and you start covering that up, people go, I bet you've got a skin disease. I bet that's why you're wearing that scarf in the summer in the ancient Near East, because you've got a skin disease. So there's no hiding this, and this threatens to upend all of Naaman's life. Naaman needs help, and nobody is able to help him. I don't know if you noticed in this text the repetition of the words Lord and King over and over and over again. Naaman is surrounded by lords and kings, powerful, well-connected, well-resourced people who utterly are powerless to help him. The lords and the kings, they're the people who are supposed to be able to access the best possible help. But Naaman is surrounded by lords who cannot save and kings who cannot heal. And so Naaman is completely and utterly bereft of help. He has a need that the world is not able to meet, and you and I in our lives are exactly the same way. We have needs that the world can't meet, hurts that the world can't heal, problems that the world has proven unable to solve. Some of these needs are physical. Hard to believe in the modern world, but still, even in the modern world of full of control over physical material resources, we have physical needs that we can't solve. Like the way that my body is out of my control. In my lusts, in my appetites, in my lack of discipline, no tips and tricks from the modern world has been able to produce a silver bullet to solve that problem. I still have physical needs in my body. There are a number of physical problems that are actively ruining our lives and our world right now that are just huge problems that we've proven unable to solve. We have people in this congregation who are heroically working on some of these problems. Climate change, cancer, degenerative disease that we are able to treat and try to make better, but have proven unable at this point in time to solve. And these are just the physical needs. What about the spiritual needs that we have? Depression, anxiety, loneliness, low self-esteem, the need for freedom, the need for joy. The world has no dependable answers for these problems. The world has a number of treatment options for these problems, but the fact that our world has proliferated treatment options for these problems proves that the world hasn't found the solution. Because if it had, we all would be drinking from that one well. Right now, there are about 20,000 wells that you can drink from to try to deal with these spiritual issues because we have no idea at the end of the day how to actually solve them. Maybe you are wrestling with one of these things today and you're going, who is able to help me? I'm just born into this place. I'm born into this time. I'm born into this body. I'm born into these needs. Where can I find help for these things that I cannot solve? And if that's all we had in our needs, if that's all that our needs were good for, by showing us our lack, showing us the ways in which we're oppressed and burdened by the world, that our needs would just be places of pain. And yet in a very strange way, our needs are also places of grace. Our needs do something for us. They give us something that we didn't have. Our needs are good for us because they open us up. When we have a profound need, a need that we can't meet, something happens in us where my limited, myopic, little bubbled view of the world gets a hole poked in it. And we begin to look through the light that comes through that little window pane, and we go, maybe there's something else out there that could help me. And our needs become places where we become more open to things that we otherwise would not have been open to before. Our needs, yes, are places of pain and challenge, and yet they also are places of opportunity and openness that we didn't have before. Our needs give us a sense of urgency to find something that was outside of me that I didn't have before. We not just become open to listening to voices from the outside and to seeing things from the outside, we also become open to believing things that we didn't believe before. Believing that there might be something outside of me that can help me and can save me. Our needs are places of pain, and yet our needs also exist to help us believe. We see this happening with Naaman in 2 Kings verses 5, verse 2. The text says, "Now the Syrians on one of their raids had carried off a little girl from the land of Israel, and she worked in the service of Naaman's wife." Where is Syria here? In many other translations, we actually see the word Aram rather than Syria. Aram was an ancient political polity that existed in what we now understand to be the region of Syria and that capital city of Damascus. So the ESV here renders Syrians. We also could call Naaman an Aramean instead. Maybe your Bible reads Aramean instead. Aram is this political polity north of Israel in the kingdom of in the land of Syria. I've got a map here for you. Love maps so you can see what's happening. Ignore the part about Elisha performing several signs, although that is the time of the biblical narrative that we're in, right? Which is why this map is helpful to pull. But you can see there Aram marked in yellow, and then Damascus, which would have been the major capital city. And when it says that they would have been raiding, they would have been coming down from Aram into the outskirt areas, the less defended areas of, at the time, the northern kingdom of Israel, which had a capital city of Samaria. Because you all know your biblical story. The United Kingdom of Israel splits into two. The southern kingdom of Judah, which was capitaled in Jerusalem, and the northern kingdom of Israel, capitaled in Samaria. And so at this time, the Arameans are raiding. They're doing military expeditions to loot and pillage from the outskirts of the northern kingdom of Israel. And during one of these raids, these Aramean armies saw and kidnapped a little girl to bring her back into the service of the Arameans. And this girl is probably exceedingly young. The Hebrew word na'ara already means girl or young woman, but the Hebrew here reads na'ara katana, meaning little girl. So we're probably talking someone who's like young elementary age or maybe younger. I mean, this is a very young child, and she's serving in Naaman's household. And Naaman has normally, on a normal day, on any given day of any given week, of any month, of any normal year, Naaman has no reason whatsoever to pay attention to this girl, let alone listen to her or something that she might say. And yet here we find Naaman doing exactly that. Listening to someone, entertaining their advice and their counsel in a situation that has led him to be open to hearing it. Because otherwise he never, ever, ever would be open to hearing from her. 2 Kings 5:4 reads this, "So Naaman went in and told his Lord, thus and so spoke the girl from the land of Israel." Naaman has listened to this little girl. He's not just listening to her, he's sharing her report with the king. But you have to imagine all the conversations like this that Naaman has had with the king. How many times when he's been sharing pertinent information of state with the king of the Arameans has Naaman go, "And by the way, I've got this wonderful 6-year-old informant who's told me important issues of state. Probably for the first time, Naaman is showing up going, hey, I've got some information. I need to go somewhere. Who told you? A child, a small child. You know, right? I mean, this has never happened before. But for the first time in his life, he's open to hearing something because his need has made him open. The text draws specific attention to the surprising nature of this. If you read carefully in how the text quotes Naaman, right? The quotation reads this: "Thus and so spoke the girl from the land of Israel." The text doesn't reproduce the message. It just puts the words blah, blah, blah in Naaman's mouth. It does reproduce with great detail where he got the information from. So the text is drawing specific attention to the fact that Naaman is listening to the source of information that he otherwise would not have been listening to. And now Naaman and the king of the Arameans, based on the king's actions in verse 5, are listening to and believing someone that they never, ever, ever would have listened to or believe in any normal circumstance. This is what our needs do for us. And they primarily do this for us in relationship to God. Because God is the great voice from the outside that we spend the majority of our lives, intentionally or unintentionally, just walling out over and over again. And yet God uses our needs not just to meet us, not just to heal us, not just to care for us, but to bring us back into relationship with Him. Because when we are in need, so often instinctively we cry out to God. So often people, when they truly are at their wits' end, will cry out to God. They'll say, God, God, if you do this thing for me, I'll do this thing for you. They say, God, I know we haven't talked in a long time, but I've got nobody else to talk to now. They say, God, if you're there, would you hear me and would you meet me? God uses our needs to do this in our lives, to make us open to hearing from and believing in a voice that we have been trying to shut out in our lives. God did this in my life many years ago. I had a period of time where I wasn't listening to the voice of God. I didn't care. I sort of thought I was a Christian. I kind of thought I had a faith life, but I didn't. I was spending many years blocking out God's voice and living how I wanted to live, and God allowed me to go through a number of hard things. And one night, even in my anger as a result of those hard things, that need of going through those hard things turned me back to the voice of God. And like I said, even in my anger, I said, God, this is the last time I'm going to talk to you. I'm so mad about all this stuff. And then in that moment, I cried out to God, and God said, you know what you need? You just need me to hold up a mirror to you. And you can see who you think you are versus who you actually are. God used my needs and even my anger in that moment to bring me back to Him so He could show me what I needed to see. I'm still 13, 14 years later, living out of the force of spiritual vitality that came from me that one night in my dorm room in my sophomore year. Because God used my need to turn me to Him so that He could say the right word at the right time to change the course of my life. This is what God does for us and how He uses our needs. Because the reality is that we need God every minute of every hour, of every day, of every week, of every month. We are living all of the time in relationship to God's grace and God's sustenance and God's provision. And it is good for us to come back into explicit relationship and knowledge of God in that. And if this is true for us, for people gathered here today, who I don't want to make any assumptions, but a number of us probably are here because we confess some faith in God or some worship of Jesus. If these things are true for us in our lives, how much more true are they for people who are without God in the world? Are without the power of faith, who are without the knowing of God's grace and God's mercy and God's love and God's provision, and especially the way that God's hand rests on our lives to help us and heal us and guide us through all the twists and turns and failures and false starts that we go through in this life. How much more in need are people who don't have the knowledge of this God? The needs of other people create opportunities in their hearts to hear the good news of God and how God might meet their need. And if we were to see people's needs and understand them instinctively and care for them and know where they can find a solution, we would naturally and instinctively share good news with them, because we share good news with other people when we see their need, when we care about them, and we believe in a solution that would be good for them. Evangelism is hard, and you might think it's hard, and maybe you have, different experiences with it. Like I said at the beginning of the sermon, maybe especially you sort of know it's something you should do, and so there are different programs of working up my will and the strength of my will, or taking on different tips and tricks, and maybe you learn conversational things. How can I turn any conversation into a conversation about, we're talking about something way over here, and somehow I've got a strategy to through the forest of despair and up and down and all of a sudden into Jesus, and all these things. And shockingly enough, you hate those things, and so you're not doing it. You're not sharing your faith with anyone or inviting them to the church because all those things feel awful. Evangelism is just derived from the Greek word euangelion, which very simply means good news. That's it. It means good news. Evangelism is sharing good news with people. It's nothing more complicated than that. And the reality is that you share good news with people all the time. All the time. You encounter things in your life where you're like, that's good. I experienced it to be good. I had a random conversation with someone over there, and I'm just going to slip in the fact that this thing is good. And so we just do that all the time. And when we're doing that in our lives, the good news sharing part feels so simple. It feels so easy. We're never having to strategize how we're going to work in that great TV show that we just recently, we're like, what's the plan to get someone, or that product, that work, or that service I'm paying? It just happens. It comes up naturally. And the reality is that natural, easy, good news sharing is something that we can think about and piece apart a little bit. Let's think about what is present in easy, good news sharing in our lives. Imagine some good news that you shared with someone recently. Maybe it's a great play that you saw, a product that you tried that worked, a place that you traveled to where you're like, everybody has to travel here and stay at this place and meet this person who was working there. Everyone's got to do, whatever it is, think of something like that. And what did it feel like to share that news? Did it feel like you had to muscle up tips and tricks? Did it feel like you had to have all these strategies in your mind? What did it feel like to share very naturally? I've got something that I could share in this regard. It's Muji socks. And it's so simple. I spend my life walking through New York, I see some heads nodding. Amen. Amen. Right? And now our witness is going to become corporate to you. So now it's just one, but 2 or 3 are speaking. And so this is going to become very powerful. I'm walking around New York. I'm churning through socks. Sock after sock after sock. Just disappointment, failed hopes. I hold up the socks, shredded to pieces by these just unforgiving concrete going, I have such high hopes for you. Incredible disappointment, sick of throwing socks away every day. And then one day my wonderful wife goes, I've seen you in your pain and your distress, and I was at Muji, and I've heard about these socks, and you should try these socks out. So I'm like, wonderful. These seem to be tough, well-made, good-looking socks for a very reasonable price. Let's try them on. And now I've had multiple pair of Muji socks for months. Not a single one is showing any sign of fraying or decay. So I'm just like, I'm wearing the gospel. I'm wearing them because they are just so, the good news of Muji socks is the easiest thing in the world for me to share for you. So if you are in this place where you are lost in the depths and despair of the sin of other socks, they're just total lostness, their moral failure, the tearing in the fabric of their being, I have good news for you today. There is a place that makes decent looking, fairly priced, durable socks, and it's called Muji, and you should go there. Right? Listen, hallelujah. You are able to share good news like this. What are the component parts of the sharing that I'm just doing? There are 3 things that are happening here. The first thing is that you just clearly see a need or a hole or a gap in somebody's life. You just see it. You're like, you have a need. I've laid eyes on it. I see clearly what it is. That's step 1. Easy, easy, easy. Step 2, harder sometimes. You honestly care about that person. Honestly, this is step 2. You care about them. You want that need to be met. Listen, there are some of, I'm just kidding. If I don't care about you, I might not tell you the gospel of Muji socks. Next time I go there, I might have told too many people. They'll be out. They'll be gone. Out of my favorite socks. Or demand will go up. They'll find they can make more. They'll raise the prices. Sharing is going to be disadvantageous to me. But if I care about you and I honestly want your life to be better, that's the second step in bringing me closer. I've seen your need and I care about you. And those two things open the door to a third thing, which is I have a living experience of the solution. I have a living experience of the solution right now. It's good for me. It's not intellectual knowledge out there. It's not I read an article out there. I mean, sometimes that's strong enough. It's a living experience of how this thing is good for me. Like I said, I'm wearing the good news. I have a living experience of the goodness of this thing right now as I'm talking to you. I'm moving my toes. I'm just kidding. Okay, this is getting weird. You're going to start thinking about my feet. You need to have a living experience, not some intellectual knowledge out there, but a lived experience of the goodness of that thing. And when you have all three of those things, you see a need, you honestly care about the person, and you right now are living the goodness of a solution to that need, boom. Easy. So simple. You don't need a strategy. You don't need a trick. You're not wondering, I wonder if this person wants me to force this on them right now. Am I coming on too strong? It's the easiest thing in the world. You just share about that good thing. This is how all good news sharing works. It's how good news sharing works in your life, and it's how good news sharing worked with this little Israelite girl who shared good news with Naaman. All three of these steps are present in 2 Kings chapter 5, verse 3. Let's look at that text again. The text says, she said to her mistress, would that my Lord were with the prophet who is in Samaria. He would cure him of his leprosy. All three steps present. 1, she sees the need. Naaman has a skin disease. He has leprosy, and that's a problem. She sees and understands the need. Step 2, and this in the context of this text is a truly shocking and surprising step. She cares about the need. The Hebrew here at the beginning is the language of if only. It's like an exclamation. She's like, if only he were with the prophets. Right? This is not the language of some dutiful sharing in order to get points in the household. It's like the language of real wishing that this person could be near this solution. This little girl cares that Naaman receives the healing that he's looking for. Maybe part of the reason is that she can see how Naaman's disease would affect her mistress. And maybe all of the people in Naaman's household, if he were to come to total ruin as a result of this skin disease. It, of course, is shocking and surprising that this little girl would care about Naaman in this way, because she has been kidnapped by the Arameans and taken against her will to serve in Naaman's household. She has every worldly right to hate this guy. She has every worldly right to hate her mistress. She has every worldly right to hate everyone in his household. She has every single worldly right to look at him in his skin disease and say, God got you. That's God's punishment on you. Thank God he's a just God and he got Naaman back. And instead, with a heart that mirrors the grace and the mercy and the faith and the generosity of God, she transcends her worldly rights and enters into a heavenly plan and said, would that God would heal this man and restore this house. She cares about him. And finally, third, she has a living experience of the solution. She knows that the prophet is able to heal. The prophet in this context is obviously Elisha. Elisha's ministering around the northern kingdom at this time. Maybe she experienced his ministry. Maybe she heard a report. She would have been right in the geographical region where Elisha was ministering. Whether she heard of it or experienced it, she knows that he has power. And she knows that he has power because she knows the power of the God of Israel. In a text that's full of lords that can't save and kings that can't heal, there's one title that matters, and it's prophet. Because the word prophet does not pretend to carry authority in itself. It knows that its authority is derivative. Derivative of what? Derivative of the healing power of the God of Israel. She knows that Israel's God is able to heal. She sees, she cares, she has a living experience of the solution. Boom. Probably even speaking up in an environment where she has not been asked to speak up. Sharing in a moment where nobody came to her saying, nobody gathered all the nobodies in the house of Naaman and said, okay, who thinks they know a solution here? They just assumed that they didn't know. So she probably went up one day and with great courage said, I know how Naaman could be healed if only somebody would listen to the good news that I have to share. And so she shares good news to him. This is how sharing the gospel of God works. We see a need that someone has. We care about them honestly, and we have our own living experience that I'm experiencing right now of the goodness of God in my life, such that I know where their need could be met. We come up to somebody who's anxious and we say, I see your anxiety and how it's ruining and running your life. I care about you. I care about your life not living under this anxiety for your whole life. My faith in God gives me such a rootedness. It gives me such a sense of security that God knows me and loves me and has a plan for my life that it drives out and deals with my anxiety. And faith in God would do the same thing for you. I see that you need healing from a physical ailment. I care about you. You should explore every avenue of healing that is available to you in this world. But I know in my life that God is a healer. He's healed me. I don't know why he doesn't always heal, but I know he's powerful to heal. And you should go to him in prayer and with faith and see if he will heal you. This is how easy natural sharing of the good news of God works. And the real delight here is that when we think clearly about these three steps, if we find that we aren't sharing good news with anybody in any way, instead of just willing myself into trying to do it more or better, we just go backwards to those three steps and say, what is missing for me here? Because if all these steps were in place, this would be working for me like it works in every area of my life. Maybe we go back to step one and say, I'm not seeing people's needs. And then we ask questions like, am I close enough to people to see their needs? Do I have enough relational proximity with someone where I'm seeing what's actually going on in their life? Maybe we go, I'm just looking at outward needs. I'm not really trained to look at people's spiritual needs manifesting. When I see a friend of mine churning through jobs, I feel like I'm looking at some external thing in life. What I'm not seeing is maybe a need for someone to belong or a need for someone to grow in endurance. I'm not looking for people's spiritual needs when I'm seeing them in their life. Maybe we look at the second step. Do I actually care? Do I care about other people? I can see someone's need, but if I'm really honest, I don't care. Maybe you've got a really good reason not to care about someone else's need. The world is full of good reasons not to care about other people. And here's the real tricky part. Some of those reasons are eminently reasonable and justifiable. Some of those reasons, if you were to tell us about them right now, you would have a very good reason for why you don't need to care for the needs of that person. And though your reasons would be factually true, God wants to fill our hearts up with faith and strength and grace and mercy that we don't always have on our own. To want to care about people anyways, just like this little girl did who had every reason in the book to not care about Naaman. Do we care about other people when we see their need? If we don't work harder at caring for them. we come to God and we say, God, I just learned something about myself. You already knew it was true, but I'm going to say it out loud to you anyways. I really don't care about other people that much. But God, you do. You are so good and compassionate. The Bible says that Jesus was moved by compassion just about every corner he turned when he was walking around this world. And God, you could give me spiritual power to have compassion for the people. I can never mimic your infinite compassion, but you could give me compassion for the right people at the right time so that I would care. And then God can do the work in you to make you someone who cares instead of you doing that old religious thing that we all love where we beat ourselves up going, I'm so bad, I don't care about people. God, I'm going to care about people more. You become some rigid, hypocritical monster instead of coming to God and just confessing, telling the truth. God, I don't care about other people, but you could make me someone who cares about other people. Maybe we look at the third item. We go, God, I just don't have a living experience of your goodness right now. I feel like it's been a while, and so I don't have anything bubbling up in me in response to that. And if that is true, then the good news is just the same as the last two steps. We don't work it up. We don't pretend like we're having some experience that we don't have. We go back to God and ask him for his goodness all over again. We go back to God and ask him for his mercy all over again. We go back to God and ask him for his provision all over again so that just like the living girl, we can have a living experience of the goodness of God that becomes power in our lives to share with other people. Where do we go to get this from God? If you notice in the little girl's version of the good news, she says, you should go and see the prophet who is in Samaria. She tells the specific location of where the prophet can be found because meeting with God has always been about going to the right place. It's been always about finding God in the right location. And in times past, God asked people to meet him on mountainsides and in fields and next to streams and by burning bushes and holy temples and sacred places. But in these last days, God has taken all these places and consolidated them into one place, the body of the resurrected Jesus. So that all places, all locations where you would ever have to meet with God have come crushing down into one glorious God-man. He has become our mountainside. He's our field. He's our stream. He's our burning bush. He's our temple. He's the place where we come by faith to meet with the living God. And when we meet with God there, we find God's grace and God's power and God's mercy and God's goodness. Because you need God's grace and you need God's mercy. You didn't need it just once upon a time back there. You need it today. You need it now in the things that you're going through, in the ways you feel insecure, in the ways you feel burdened by and beaten up by the world. You need the mercy and the grace and the power and the goodness and the majesty of the living God who is in heaven. You find these things through Jesus, the location where God for all time has asked to be found. And when we meet God there, we gain again a living experience of the goodness of God, which completes this cycle so that we can see people and care about them and share our own living experience of the goodness of God with them. All of this is done to move people towards God. It's not just that they'll have some intellectual experience, it's that they will change where they are spatially. Look at 2 Kings 5:5. The king of Syria said, "Go now, and I will send a letter to the king of Israel." In the Hebrew, these words "go now" are actually just two different words for the word "go." It's like he's saying, go, get. Like, oh, you know what? Get out of here. Go right now. He tells him to move. Yeah, scram. Get out of here. Right? Let's go. Like, move along. Go. Like, let's respond to this good news. Good news sharing is all about moving people to a new place. Not just about meeting the need, it's about getting them out of the place that they were in before the need was met. It's a place of despair, a place of hopelessness, a place of feeling alone and forgotten and unvalued, a place of grief, a place of fear, a place of despondency, and instead to move them into a place of joy, a place of courage, a place of strength, a place of hope, a place of love. And God uses our needs as opportunities for us to be moved to a new place when we reach out to Him. God does this for you in your own needs. Ask yourself today, what needs do I have? I know you're asking all the time, where can I get these needs met? But maybe ask today the deeper question. Ask today the question, how is God using my need to reach out to me? How is God using my need not just as a need to be met, but as an opportunity for me to hear Him when I'm deaf, and for me to see Him when I'm blind, for me to reach out when I've been rigid and locked up and close to Him? And then as God does this for you, ask the question, where is God calling me to naturally share good news? What needs of other people has God made you able to see? We're not all able to see the same needs, but God has made you able to see certain needs. And if He's made you able to see those needs, He'll give you compassion to be able to care for those people who are in that need. And then out of your own living experience of God's goodness, to be able to share with them, I see your need and I care about you, and my faith does this for me, and I know that it would do the same thing for you. And when we do this, sharing good news stops becoming some onerous, burdensome, heavy process. And it starts becoming an easy, light thing that we do naturally, just like we do in every single other area of our lives. And if you feel like this cycle isn't working for you, don't do that force of will thing. Don't say, I've been bad and I'm going to do what the preacher told me to do. I haven't actually told you to do any of those steps. I've told you to recognize whether you are or aren't, and then go tell God about it, so that He can give you power to work those steps in there. Tell Him, God, I don't know why, but I have no passion or strength in me to share good news with other people. Help me. Help me. Help my eyes be open to the needs of others. Help me care about other people. Help me have again a new and living experience of your goodness in my life, so that I can tell other people that there is a God in heaven. He cares about your needs. He's met mine. He'll meet yours when you meet Him in the cosmic location of His Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.